Shalom, my name is Tafaz Wandengwa. I'm a business studies teacher. Today I'm going to be teaching mainly on moving averages, which is one of our requirements for paper 3 business studies, syllabus code 9609. Before we start this lesson, please, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel, like, and share. So today we are looking at moving averages as the main topic. As you'll be following us, you're going to see that we're going to be revealing other topics as well, so that we can explain especially those topics that seem to be challenging for many students. Alright, so for those that know, moving averages is basically essentially a very important topic for paper 3. We'll be mainly talking about forecasting. Sales forecasting is part of our market analysis. So what are we required to know here? This one is basically a quantitative way of forecasting. If you know, there are qualitative methods of forecasting and there's also quantitative forecasting methods. So this one is quantitative forecasting, which involves calculation of some aspects, and yeah, that's what I'm going to be explaining more about. So moving averages actually shows us 4 important things. There are questions sometimes that come when they say evaluate the importance of moving averages. They do show us 4 types of fluctuations. The first one is called seasonal fluctuation, which actually occurs within a period of 1 year. It can be daily, it can be weekly, it can be monthly. Then we have cyclical fluctuations that occur for a period of at least 1 year, and they are caused by changes in the business cycle like economic boom, recession. So they are called cyclical fluctuations. We are also able to see what we call random fluctuations that can occur at any time without warning. These ones are quite difficult to forecast. Like, for example, what happened in 2020 when there was COVID-19. That one is a random fluctuation because it was difficult to forecast. It occurred abruptly. So it can also be shown by moving averages. We are also able to establish what we call the trend, which is an underlying movement in sales. And I think if you can look at here, this is what we call the standard quarterly moving average. That's the trend. It's very important when we are doing forecasting. Alright, so if you're looking at this, I actually took this from May-June 2024, question paper variant 3.2. That's where I got this from. And in this case, we're required to calculate the seasonal variation. It also required to calculate the value of X. Okay, so we're going to actually explain how that works. But before we get there, I want you to know that from this information here, we have the quarter, we have the sales, and then we have the standard quarter moving average. We can also have the seasonal variation column, and we can also have the average seasonal variation column. So you can be asked to calculate any of those things. Mostly the seasonal variation, the moving average trend, and the average seasonal variation. You'll be required to calculate that. But today I want us to maybe just have a flash back of how we calculate things, like for example the 4-quarter moving total and the 8-quarter moving total. Like here, for example, if you look at our sales, this is our quarter, this is our sales. When I'm calculating what we call the 4-quarter moving total, it's simply an issue of adding 29 plus 20 plus 16 plus 27. The total is the 4-quarter moving total. When you divide that by 4, you get what we call the 4-quarter moving average. Okay? If it's 8-quarter, we are actually adding up how many? 2 4-quarter totals to get the 8-quarter moving total. So it's very important you should be able to actually add up and get the 4-quarter moving total and get the 8-quarter moving total as well. But the most important thing is sometimes they ask you to say, calculate the seasonal variation. So seasonal variation is equals to, you say, sales minus the moving average trend. Right? So in this case, for example, they say for 2023, quarter 1, calculate the seasonal variation. You are going to say 16, that's your sales for quarter 1 in 2023, minus what? 23.75. Okay, so if you're calculating that, you say 16 minus 23.75, that should give you minus 7.75. That becomes your what? Your seasonal variation. Okay? Remember, the moving average, that's the trend, that's your average. And when you're calculating the seasonal variation, you're simply trying to calculate by how much are our sales deviating from the average, which is like our mean. So in this case, we see that sales in quarter 1, they were minus 7.75 away from the what? From the moving average. So that's what we're calculating. So it's easy for you to know that with the seasonal variation, you're simply minusing what? The moving average from the sales. Okay? So you get your seasonal variation. Sometimes they can even ask you and say, okay, calculate the average seasonal variation for quarter 1. Okay? So what you're simply going to do is average seasonal variation, you simply add the seasonal variation. So which means you have to calculate, for example, in this case, you have to calculate the seasonal variation for all the ones, the quarter ones. And here we have this one and this one. So we calculate the seasonal variation for all quarter ones. We get this one, 16 minus 20.71, and 75, we get what we get. And then we add it to also what? 20 minus what will be here. To get the what? The seasonal variations total. And then we divide by their number. In this case, they are just 2. So it will be the seasonal variation of this first quarter and the seasonal variation of this first quarter divided by 2, because there are 2 average seasonal, 2 seasonal variations. So we get our average seasonal variation. It's very important. You'll see this. We're going to be having our next episode where I'm going to be teaching you about how to forecast now. Because for you to be able to forecast sales, you need average seasonal variation and a figure on the graph for the sales forecast. Okay? So the next thing that was also asking from this question was they wanted us to calculate the value of X. Now, many students, they face a lot of problems. Why? Because the table that you see in the textbook to explain how we calculate the moving averages is quite different now from what you see in the exam. That one seems very simple, okay? But what you see in the exam is quite different. So you're going to see that in this case, for example, they can bring something like this. This was for 2024 May, June. And they wanted to calculate the value of what? X. X here is what? X here is the centered quarterly moving average. Right? So how do you calculate? When you're faced with such a situation, it is important always to know that we always start 2 units above what we're calculating. Like in this case, we're calculating X. So when we're adding up the cells to get the 4-quarter moving total, we start 2 units above, which means we are actually going to start where? This is our X. So we're starting to add from 20. Okay? So 1, 2. The line above, 2 units above. So we're going to start to add from 20 to get our 4-quarter total. Right? Our 4-quarter moving total. So we're going to go and then we say from here 20 plus 16 plus 27 plus 35. So it's going to be like this. Okay? So it will be 20 plus 16 plus 27 plus 35. That's the first quarter. The first 4 quarters. Then we calculate again the second forward quarter, which is going to be 16 plus 27 plus 35 plus 24. Okay? So we're going to calculate this quickly. I'm sure it will give us for the first one, to give us 20 plus 16 plus 27 plus 35. It gives us 98 here. And for the other one, it gives us 16 plus 27 plus 35 plus 24. It gives us 102. And what we do now is we add these two. So we say 102 plus 98, it gives us 200. Then, because we have 8, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We divide this by 8. So 200 divided by 8, which gives us what? 25. So the value of x becomes what? 25. That is how we actually get the value of what? Of x. The trick here is you cannot calculate from all above to get to x. Know that when we are actually asking to calculate the standard moving average, we are starting to add to get the four quarter total. We are starting 2 units above. So always take note of that. If it was this, we know that we are starting from 16. If you ask me to calculate this, we know that we're going to start from 27. You have our 4 quarter total, you have the other 4 quarter total, add them up and divide by 8. And then we get our standard moving average. So that is how you calculate this. This is very important. Like what I was saying, you need to be able to know how to calculate the 4 quarter total, the 4 quarter moving average, which you divide now by 4. You need to be able to calculate the 8 quarter moving total and the 8 quarter moving average, where you divide by 8. You need to be able to calculate the seasonal variation when you say sales minus the moving average trend. It's very important. And then to calculate the average seasonal variation for each quarter, where I say that you add up. Like if it was, for example, for quarter 4, you're simply going to calculate the seasonal variation for quarter 4 and the seasonal variation for the other quarter 4 here in 2023. You add them up and you divide them by 2, because here we have only 1, 2, the 4s, isn't it? So you divide by 2, you get the average seasonal variation. Then that will actually be used to forecast. I will teach you in the next segment how you can use that one for what? For your forecast. Okay, still there, maybe just to add one more thing. You need to know that always after this, they'll ask you why it is important to forecast. The importance of forecasting. Remember, forecasting is important not only in the marketing department. The marketing department, they'll be able to know how many units of a product to distribute. Okay? But also the operations department is able to plan their production capacity. How many units are we supposed to produce? So they will use the forecast, this forecast, they will use it to actually plan their production capacity. Even the HRM, which is the Human Resources Management, they will know also how many workers to employ, depending with how many units are actually going to be sold and that have to be produced. This determines the human resources needs as well of the organization. So it's also very important. To the financial department, the finance department, remember when they do cash flow forecasting, sales forecasts are a cash inflow. So for them to do also sales forecasting, and for them to do cash flow forecasting, they need sales forecast from the marketing department. So it's very important for you to know this. But however, you know these are just forecast. They can be affected by anything. Like in 2020, many firms would have maybe assumed that sales are going to continue to grow. But unfortunately, there was COVID-19 and sales yet to drop because businesses were actually what? Forced to shut down operations. So in that case now, it becomes difficult for us to forecast trends into the future. So that becomes a weakness of relying on data from forecast. Thank you.